Welcome to Madison City Channel's Know Your Candidates interviews, co-sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Dane County. I'm your interviewer, Maria Spinozzi, and I would like to introduce Michael Cerro, running for Alder from District 3. As we begin, please tell our viewers a bit about how your educational, vocational, and civic experience has prepared you for the position and why you decided to run for Alder.
Well, first, thanks for having me here, Maria. I appreciate the opportunity. I am a resident of Madison. I grew up here, was born in Madison, and went to all of the public schools on the east side. After graduating from La Follette, I ended up at the University of Wisconsin. I received a degree in mechanical engineering from there and ended up going to work outside of Madison, outside of the state for about a dozen years. Ended up coming back to Madison and volunteering for various organizations in the district. I was part of the McClellan Park Neighborhood Association, which has been since renamed North Star. I was on a board for the Covered Bridge subdivision. I have volunteered to help with the engineering and the construction of small youth hockey arena just outside of Madison, and I have basically spent the last 20 years helping to volunteer and make the community better.
Madison's efforts to address chronic homelessness have appeared to fall short, especially with regard to providing sufficient support systems for a housing-first approach. What ideas do you have that might create greater success for projects such as the one on Tree Lane?
Well, I think Madison has attempted to do a lot of this work on its own. They have really struggled hard to provide enough housing. I think the approach needs to be taken from a countywide perspective. Presently, in talking with the county, they have no plans to build any affordable housing outside of the city of Madison. I think it needs to be a countywide approach. Many communities don't offer any housing for residents below a certain income level that Madison does offer. Actually, Madison has about 90% of the affordable housing in the county. We represent 48% of the county's population. Really, we need to work with the county and all of the smaller municipalities and encourage them to provide additional housing. We can't be the only ones. We're driving people to Madison from communities where they live with their families and their support systems. We're driving them to Madison because Madison is the only place where they can find affordable housing.
The Madison Police Department has been faulted for not having appropriate policies and training around de-escalation and use of force, especially with regard to people of color. What is your perspective on whether any changes are needed in the ways Madison Police operate in our community?
Well, certainly changes need to be made. The Madison Police Department currently operates understaffed for a community of our size, and go into a little more detail about that. Madison has about 60 to 70,000 commuters that come into Madison every single day. So we're really not a community of 255,000 people. We're closer to 315 to 325,000. So the Madison Police Department is staffed up to the nationwide average of about 255,000 people. We need additional officers so that they can spend more time with the community on these calls and develop those connections with the community. So I fully support the additional staffing and the additional training that's necessary so that these officers can be effective and can slow the pace down and be able to respond to the calls in a more appropriate manner.
There is a perception that Madison's story is a tale of two cities, one in which people of color are less likely to experience success. What can be done to ensure that Madison is a community in which all people can thrive?
I think we need to start much earlier than looking at where we're at now. We need to be looking at the students and making sure that every student graduates high school with a good education, very good base for that would be to provide maybe additional coaching or helping outside of MMSD. We could utilize perhaps additional resources. We have lots of retirees. We continue to grow our our elderly community, and a lot of those people have very good skills, many teachers that could help out in educating our students. I think by educating them to a higher level, we can help to alleviate some of these inequalities. I think right now, unfortunately, that is where we're failing as a community to provide this high level of education so that these people, these young adults, when they do graduate from school, they're prepared for the higher tech industries, the healthcare industries. Madison isn't the factory base, doesn't have the factory base that it once had. We've moved beyond that. A lot of the factory and the construction type work is now outside of the city of Madison. And so subsequently, when people do graduate from high school, they're finding it very difficult to find work for an individual that may not have advanced training and education.
What issue have you identified as being of primary concern to the residents of your district, and how would you approach tackling it?
Residents in our district, it's a very residential district. It doesn't have a lot of commercial, primarily focused on the needs of the fire and rescue services and the police department, making sure that we have a rescue squad out at the new fire station, making sure that we have effective policing, neighborhood policing. We've got a small area that has a higher crime within it, a lot of gun-related violence that occurred there, and it would be very helpful to be able to staff up our police department to be able to deal with that. We've got some issues with traffic where we've got some excessive speed going through certain neighborhoods past the local elementary school, and so a lot of that deals with infrastructure. So those are some of the top needs that the community has expressed to me.
The relationship between the council and the mayor appears at times contentious. Is this a problem, and if so, how would you improve the relationship?
It may appear that way. I don't have any factual information that necessarily trues that out. I would prefer to develop a relationship with the mayor on my own without any preconceived notions that there is any contention necessarily between, there might be some contentious issues between individual alders and the mayor, but I would like to start that relationship with the mayor fresh out the gate.
What changes, if any, should be made in how the city approaches major projects, such as Judge Doyle Square and the public market?
Well, there's a lot of work that needed to be done in relationship to the Judge Doyle Square. That whole parking structure was had been in place for many decades and it was crumbling. The building that it replaces is modernized. It meets current requirements from the federal government for certain access needs to ADA. It is a much more functionally appropriate building for where we're at presently with regulations and so forth. So we had to do something. It was a necessary expenditure that the people had to take on. And the approaches are, again, to see where we can get funding for that. Can we get federal dollars? Can we get state dollars to help assist in paying for those upgrades or complete new builds? So that's where, we currently have a pretty good structure, I think, that works in that direction. I think we need to continue that and need to focus on also the county. And we provide lots of services for people that live outside of Madison, that live in the county, villages and townships. And I think that the county really needs to also step up and provide more funding for these types of projects.
What council committees do you want to serve on and why?
Urban Design Committee and Planning. I believe in my background in engineering and in project management that would lend itself well to those committees. The Parks Commission, I believe that could utilize some additional enhancements to that department.
would you like to say to the viewing audience as we complete this interview?
Well, my candidacy and my the opportunity for me being on the Common Council is I believe that I would provide a voice for District 3 that hasn't been in place on the Common Council in the past 6 or 8 years. I believe that I would represent the needs of our district better. I would represent the city moving forward for everybody in these times where we have such dramatic increase in our population. We struggle with an aging population that's having a hard time meeting their needs for housing. They're being taxed every year incrementally 2.5% to 4% more every year. Those very same individuals that are on fixed incomes are struggling to meet their needs as well. So we can't forget about the growing population of folks that have retired and are there in our communities as well. Madison is going to see growth of in excess of 1,000 people every year. So we have a lot of demands on our services, a lot of demands on the transportation. We need to find ways to support those individuals moving into our community. We also need to find more equitable ways to pay for those services, and that a lot of those individuals that commute into Madison utilizing the city services, we need to balance that out a little better. Madison does not operate as an island. We are part of Dane County community, and we support many individuals living outside of Madison and their needs for work, for health care, for entertainment. We need to make sure that they're paying their share as well.
I want to thank Michael Cerro for speaking with us and the viewing audience for taking their time to know your candidates. Please vote in this and every election. On behalf of Madison City Channel and the League of Women Voters of Dane County, I thank you for joining us.